Buongiorno studenti. Today I want to talk about something that blocks so many students when speaking Italian, the fear of making mistakes. Now, I've seen this with so many students. When they would have the opportunity of speaking in Italian, per esempio, they are on vacation here in Italy, or they meet with an Italian person where they live, they often end up telling themselves things like, oh no, if I make mistakes, it means I'm not ready yet to speak Italian. Or if I speak and it's wrong, then I will look foolish. Or something like, I will wait until I feel more confident. So, what happens is this: you keep sentences short and uncertain, you rehearse too much in your head, and you end up switching to English too quickly. And as a result, you understand Italian, you improve in understanding the Italian language, but you end up not really using it. And without using the language, without speaking, your progress becomes very slow. Now, this is a very, very common problem, and here's why this happens. Now, most of us were trained to see mistakes as failure. In school, for example, mistakes meant red marks, they meant correction, they meant judgment. But language learning, especially as an adult, is not a school test. It's a process. È un processo. And what I want you to realize is that mistakes are an essential part of this process. Essenziale, essential. Mistakes are a sign that you are actively using the language, not just studying it. Now, there's an old Sicilian saying that I always use to explain this concept to my students. Uh, you probably know, if you've been following me for a while, that I am Sicilian. I'm from Sicily, the southernmost region of Italy. And in Sicilian, which is the dialect of Sicily, we say this: Solo chi non mangia non fa i muddichi. Now in italiano. Solo chi non mangia non fa le molliche. Now, let me type this for you. Solo chi non mangia non fa le molliche. Cosa significa? What does that mean? Well, that would translate in English to only the one who doesn't eat doesn't make crumbs, which is a wonderful saying, or old, very old saying that I think is really important in this case. It really resonates with this situation. If there are crumbs, it means you're eating. You cannot eat without making crumbs. And that's the same for mistakes. If there are mistakes, it means you are learning. You cannot learn without making mistakes. They are an essential part of the process. So here's what I want to remember from now on: making mistakes is totally normal. Don't be ashamed of them. Be proud of them. Please be proud of the fact that you are trying. They mean that you are learning, not just dreaming or thinking of learning. Now, of course, it's also important to learn from our mistakes. That's how progress happens. So, here's my method to help you with that, to help you turn your mistakes into progress. And it's a very simple 3-step process that I want you to start following from now on. Solo 3 passi, just 3 simple steps. Whenever you make a mistake, which is normal, normale, totalmente normale, from now on, first of all, write it down. Second, add a quick note about it. And third, terzo, practice it a few times, the correct form a few times. In this way, you're turning your mistakes, which are normal and essential part of the process, into your personalized textbook. You may think of it like your progress notebook. Il mio quaderno dei progressi. call it like that. Take a notebook and use it only for that. Use it only for your mistakes and turn them into progress. Il mio quaderno dei progressi. I'm going to type this for you so you can write that down in your notebook, nel tuo quaderno. You are totally reframing your mistakes and you're turning them into something extremely helpful. Now, I want to try this with you, of course, as always. I don't want to just give you a theoretical rule. I want to give you a practical application of it so that you can really use this immediately. As soon as you finish this, watching this video, I want you to start putting this into practice, like always with all my videos. So let's try this together. Let's say you want to say something like, I'm going to Italy next year. Think how you would say that. Now, let's suppose you say it this way, because this is a very common way. I've seen so many students saying this phrase. So you want to say, I'm going to Italy next year. So you probably translate that very literally and say something like, Vado a Italia l'anno prossimo. And then you discover that this is not correct. Vado a Italia is not the correct way to say that. So you just made a mistake. Oh, succede, it happens. How can we turn this into a good thing? If you discover this is not correct, immediately try to understand why it's not correct. So, and what is the correct form? So the correct form is vado in Italia l'anno prossimo. That's the correct way to say I go to Italy. We say vado in Italia. Instead of feeling embarrassed, just start thinking something like fantastico, something else to add to my quaderno dei progressi. Now, once you have noted down the correct form, I want you to take a quick note on why this is the correct form. So that's going to be help you with memorizing the rule and remembering that later. So in this case, the reason is simple. Well, see, as simple as can be with Italian grammar, but I'll try to make it super simple. In Italian, when you use to go, we change preposition depending on where you're going. So if you say to go to a country, you use the preposition in. If you say to go to a city, you use the preposition a. So the rule that I want you to quickly note down is this. Use in, so vado, I go, in più paese, in plus country, and use a più città, a plus city. So if you say I go to, you will know now that if you say I go to country, you say vado in and the name of the country, paese. If you say I go to a city, you say vado a plus the name of the city. By the way, I have a dedicated video on this very grammar topic, so link will be in the description if you want to check it out. So that's the second step. You write down a quick note. And then third step, you immediately practice it a few times, the correct form, of course. So in this case, we just learned that we use in più paese and a più città. So you could say, I go to Germany, and you will type, let's take a little bit more space. Vado in Germania, because Germany is a country. Or I go to Rome. Vado a Roma, because Roma is a city. How would you say I go to Venice? Vado a Venezia. This practice is what makes the correct form natural and turns really the mistake into real progress. Now, as always, I'm curious to hear from you. Have you ever avoided speaking Italian because you were afraid of making mistakes? Please let me know in the comments. I always love to hear about your experience in learning the language. Now, please remember, the problem is not making mistakes. It's avoiding practice because of them. Now, there's actually another layer here. Sometimes the fear of making mistakes doesn't come from perfectionism or fear of judgment. It comes from not feeling solid in the basics. If that's the case, of course, you need to learn those basics, but most importantly, you need to practice them so the mindset is the same. Even if that's your case, that you don't feel you have the basics in yet, you can still apply my 3-step method. So learn a rule, write it down, and practice it. That's it. And by the way, if your fear comes from this feeling that your foundations are not solid enough and you are at the beginning of your Italian learning journey, then you might benefit from my Italian 101 course. Italian 101 is a step-by-step program that teaches you the foundations of Italian grammar with clear explanations, practical examples, and a structured repetition that's built in the program, exactly as I showed you today. You can try Italian 101 for 10 days and see if it works for you, if that structure works for you and makes a difference in your language learning journey. You will find the link below this video. Now, something else that I want to share with you is this. A common fear that many students share when making mistakes in speaking Italian with Italian native speakers, is what the Italian people will think of them if they do make mistakes. Now, here again, we do need to change our mindset. Mistakes say that we are trying, and that's something that not everyone does. Most people just stop because of that fear, but you are pushing through. So, again, be proud of your mistakes. But also, Italian people are in general very nice and supportive because we do know how difficult learning another language can be, especially as adults. So, please remember, solo chi non mangia non fa le molliche. Celebrate your crumbs, learn from them, don't shy away from them. And that's all for today. È tutto per oggi. I'll see you next week. Ci vediamo la prossima settimana. Ciao ciao da Valentina.